Welcome, everyone. So delighted to see you. For those of you who were here for dinner and reception live, I know that you've been enjoying networking with people and the wonderful French cuisine by Chef Daniel. For those of you, and there are a number of young people, happy to see you, who are joining us for the first time this evening for the program, and for those of you who are watching online, welcome as well. We're really, really pleased that you're all joining us. We're going to be enjoying this evening in two parts. Part one will be recognizing three outstanding recipients for Arthur C. Clarke Awards for Innovation, Imagination, and Service to Society, and the Lifetime Achievement Award. It will be followed by a Clarke Conversation on Imagination, which is about how do we navigate a positive future for Earth dwellers, human and otherwise, in an AI and advanced tech world. And we will precede this with a very special announcement about a new program, the HAL 9000 Challenge, that we believe can generate fresh ideas and potent ideas for the future of our world. I also want to use my time to thank Kate Ainsley Myers and Mary Myers for your contributions to the Tedson Myers Youth Fund, which continues to welcome donations. The fund will be used for fellowships for young people who participate in the HAL 9000 Challenge. By the way, it's still open for donations. But before I go further, I want to especially recognize our major sponsors, Iridium, Hughes, and Google, and all of those who have also contributed through donations and by being here. We thank you all for your generosity, for supporting the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation's Unleash Imagination, Shape the Future program. All sponsors are noted in our online program, so I encourage you to look through that program. And now, I'm very pleased to introduce Bran Farren. Those of you who were with us in 2016, and I think there are a number of you who will recall that Bran was awarded the Clarke Imagination and Service to Society award that year. Bran co-chaired with me an exciting group of 15 creative and accomplished people, members of our Brain Trust group. They have worked together over the past year to create a very special, indeed, I underscore unique, program that matches ideas of digital denizens, the young, with experienced professionals in collaborating ventures to ready for implementation their proposals for how to navigate safely and to the greater benefit of humanity in an AI world. I'm also very pleased that some of the Brain Trust members are with us tonight, and some have joined us online. Will those of you, I know it's a dark room here in Maison Française, but will those of you who have been on the Brain Trust and who are moving to the HAL 9000 Steering Committee, please stand up so that we can identify you. And there are others here in this dark room. And Bran, if you have questions or thoughts about what you hear today and about the Brain Trust, please feel free in the dessert time to ask them, ask all of us. Many of them have now joined a steering committee that will oversee further development of HAL 9000 so that we can invite the first round of proposals in early 2025. So next year is going to be a year of raising funds and organizing and positioning ourselves with networks of youth and, by the way, a core of adult volunteers who might want to be part of this program. Bran will serve with me as co-chair of the steering committee. So let me now turn the mic to him.
Good evening. It's so nice to see a few remaining analog people in audiences. Yes, to see you. And first of all, I'd like to extend my thanks to the members of the steering committee. And we've been working to conceptualize this and how to pay appropriate respect to the vision of Arthur Clarke and the implications of the world. It's kind of an interesting moment when HAL 9000 is not such a fantasy of science fiction, but something that many people think are around the corner. And when we were thinking about this, the idea, it might seem odd to some people that the vision of the future is HAL 9000. Our interpretation is actually quite the opposite, that it was a cautionary tale. And that cautionary tale is something which informs us and future generations of how do you wish to deal with these responsibilities of artificial intelligence, machine intelligence, et cetera. You know, when I was at MIT, my professor was Marvin Minsky, often called the father of AI. And I listened to AI being right around the corner for 40 years. And it turns out it's right around the corner. So, you know, who knew? But this competition we're building is precisely about fostering those creative ideas about how we actually avoid a HAL 9000 future and how we harness the skills, talents, and imagination of young people to be able to assist in this. It's remarkable to think that it was 60 years ago that Clarke was envisioning this. And, you know, that's quite a prescient observation. And often you hear about Clarke geosynchronous satellites, et cetera. But I think this is becoming a directly relevant question for society. And the point of this is, how do we take advantage of this particular moment where it's becoming real? So how do we heed his warning? How do we take the rapidly accelerating promise of AI, as well as the concerns about AI, and work to the benefit of society rather than some of the alternatives? The HAL 9000 challenge will turn to young people. These are the people like my daughter, who's 14 years old. They're going to be the ones inventing our future. And we will be seeking and rewarding proposals that drive greater benefits to society and help deter the potential negative consequences. And I think that both of those are important, and maintaining a balance and a perspective is critical. Our future is our kids, and our goal is to stimulate their creativity for the benefit of society and to foster the kind of intergenerational collaborations that help take the creative ideas of young people and actually make them actionable and executable, which some of us older folk have some experience in. And so the idea is, how do you create this type of teamwork? We hope that you're as intrigued with the possibilities that we've been in putting this together, and we both invite and appreciate your support and help in achieving this goal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bran. As Bran has so clearly said, the Clarke Foundation is really excited about the HAL 9000 challenge. We hope that you will be too. It's timely, we're convinced, and will produce potent proposals for a positive impact for society. We firmly believe that the power of intergenerational collaboration and co-mentoring is potent. We invite each of you, through your donations, willingness to volunteer, and access to youth networks to help us reach those young people and their ideas, to consider helping us build a program that truly makes a difference. And again, please feel free to talk to us about it. Now, uh, uh, we've all come together for something other than this tonight. We've come together for a celebration of the power of imagination paired with expertise and determination in the embodiment of three outstanding awardees. And so with that, I turn the stage over to the main parts of our program. Thank you. We've had a glitch. The mic isn't working. So let me just, with great honor and expectation, introduce Helen Stofan, Undersecretary of the Smithsonian Institution, who will introduce our first awardee.
Thank you, Walda, and good evening, everyone. As you heard, I'm Ellen Stofan, the Undersecretary for Science and Research at the Smithsonian Institution. I am so honored to present the Sir Arthur C. Clarke Innovators Award to Mike Ulica and the National Geographic Society. This is a great intersection for me. As the former director of the National Air and Space Museum, we hold the papers of Arthur C. Clarke. Such a thrill to see his hand notations on his manuscripts. And I'm also currently a trustee of the National Geographic Society. I think we all have an image, that gold border of the National Geographic in our heads. If you're like me, National Geographic Society introduced me to the far-ranging corners of our world and sparked curiosity and imagination. I learned about places I had never been through determined explorers who dared ask the question why, how, and what's next. National Geographic Society has pushed physical and intellectual boundaries since the 1880s by questioning, learning, and questioning again. Almost 135 years ago, the National Geographic Society was established with a dedication to the increase and diffusion of knowledge, sharing a mission with my home, the Smithsonian. I bridge these two institutions, but what is so special is what unites us. Both institutions, simple and singular focus on learning. I've been surrounded by science my whole life. My father worked for NASA, my mother was a science teacher. And even though I was immersed in this world of science and technology around me, I wasn't sure I was meant to be a scientist because I couldn't see women who looked like me in the field. But we got National Geographic at home. And it was through looking at those magazines, seeing stories of foundational women scientists, that I started to believe that I could. Women like Jane Goodall and Mary Leakey, pioneers who were changing our understanding of the world. But at the end of the day, they were women just like me. National Geographic has always been at the forefront of storytelling and championing individuals who drive our understanding of the world forward, helping to inspire the next generation of explorers. But I'm prouder today to emphasize now that it's the next generation, it's the children of tomorrow who have a better understanding of what a scientist is because of the efforts of the National Geographic Society is taking. It shouldn't be revolutionary or innovative to prioritize diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion efforts, to be intentionally vocal about it, or asked to be held accountable for it. But now it is, and that won't always be the case. Right now, nearly half of National Geographic explorers are women, with 65% of their fieldwork done in their home country. Research has shown that diverse teams lead to better work. Investment in your local areas creates a feeling of responsibility to ensure the sustainability of our planet. The only way we can preserve the beauty and health of Earth, which National Geographic Society has taught us about for the last century, is to empower the everyday person with the tools to believe that they can make a difference. Imagine what another 135 years will give us. How much more will we learn? How much more innovative will the research become with the foundation of diverse voices and investment in every segment of our population around the world? It's this intrinsic itch to discover and learn that permeates National Geographic Society. I've had the pleasure of working with Mike Ulica since I joined the board in 2020. As president and chief operating officer at National Geographic Society, he helped orchestrate the Society's partnership with Disney. He joined Nat Geo in 2006 and previously served as the Society's executive vice president, chief operating and financial officer. Mike has had a long career in media, including at Discovery Communications and Time Life. His passion is making sure the Society is the best organization it can be so that it can focus on its mission of bringing the excitement of exploration to the world. Congratulations, Mike.
Please welcome this year's recipient of the Clark Innovators Award, the National Geographic Society, represented by its president and COO, Michael Ulica.
The Arthur C. Clarke Foundation tonight is honored to present the year's award to the National Geographic Society. I will read the citation. For encouraging curiosity and supporting exploration that inspires humanity.
Well, thank you, Ellen. It's always nice to get introduced by your boss, one of our bosses. It's truly an honor to be here this evening and accept this award on behalf of the National Geographic Society. So thank you so much. You know, I've been with the Society for a long time, as you heard from Ellen, almost 18 years, and I'm a true believer in the work that we're doing is going to make a difference in the world. Many of you know the Society for its long history of exploration and innovation, a tradition that dates back over 135 years. When the Society and the magazine first started in 1888. And I like to tell this little known fact, but it wasn't until 1905 when the first photographs were published in the magazine. And it caused a few board members to threaten to resign as they thought this innovation was not scientific. Can you imagine the National Geographic magazine with no photographs? Impossible. This same spirit of innovation carried over to our leadership too. The Society's second president was the scientist and inventor Alexander Graham Bell. Yes, that Graham Bell. So from the beginning, our work was grounded in original storytelling, rigorous science, and trailblazing technology. And over the decades, we built on this commitment to ingenuity, consistently pushing boundaries in our quest to advance knowledge about our world and our role in it. We drove impact by funding and supporting National Geographic explorers, changemakers in science, exploration, conservation, technology, education, and powerful storytelling. We funded the legendary explorers like Jacques Cousteau and his breakthrough work in underwater filmmaking and photography. In 1955, the Society supported the now legendary voyage of Cousteau's made in the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. The film made there, The Silent World, is arguably the most influential underwater documentary ever made and actually won an Academy Award. And this was the model, harnessing the power of innovation and exploration. It would become part of the fabric of our organization for years to come. Today, in the midst of this urgent global challenges, we know that we must continue to innovate and drive change at scale to make a more meaningful difference in the planet and its people. Over the last decade, we've taken a number of steps to strengthen and evolve our organization. We've sharpened our strategy, which we call NG Next, and it deepens our focus on Explorer-led programs, focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion and partnerships for scale. Secondly, as a global nonprofit organization, we continue to evolve our model and double down our commitment to our mission, which is to use the power of science, exploration, education, and storytelling to illuminate and protect the wonder of our world. At the National Geographic Society, we often say that science and exploration are our foundation, and storytelling and education are our superpowers. It is our belief that when people understand our world and have an emotional connection to its natural and cultural wonders, they'll take action to support and protect them. As Jacques Cousteau once said, we only protect what we love. This multidisciplinary approach, led by our global community of National Geographic explorers, is absolutely vital to addressing today's growing challenges like climate crisis and the staggering loss of biodiversity. Together with our explorers, we're asking some of the most important questions, like how is the planet going to change over the next 10 years, the next 100 years? What about new technologies like AI and others that are unleashing a new age of exploration? And what are discoveries that we're advancing our understanding of humanity, and how do we engage tomorrow's leaders to drive change? Explorers hold the key. They are the experts and innovators on the front line. And here's a look at who our explorers are today. Can we please roll the video?
If I was an explorer,
I would wake up, put on my gear,
hijab,
binoculars, a hat.
I would take my tools to investigate.
I'd put on my spacesuit, and then I'd shoot off into the stars.
If I was an explorer,
I'd climb into a rocket.
I'd fly to the sun. I like to go to the places that most people usually don't go to. Explore my city.
I'd tell stories to the world with my photos and videos of my experiences, my discoveries. I'd go to the depths of space, the bottom of an ocean.
If I was an explorer, I wouldn't care about getting dirty.
I would discover and analyze different things that have never been seen.
I'll discover new species.
I would take my findings back to the lab.
To build things, create new things.
I'd find a cure for cancer.
I'd recycle our trash to build buildings.
And make the world a better place.
Maybe an explorer is all about understanding this world better.
To show the world a different way of seeing.
To venture into uncharted territory.
My name is Arthur Huang.
My name is Hannah Reyes Morales.
My name is Dominique Demille Correa Gonçalves, and this is what an explorer looks like.
Truly impressive. So when we think about innovation, I want to just share a few stories that truly are moving the needle in exciting and transformative ways. Starting with explorers Baker Perry and Tom Matthews. In May of 2019, along with a team of scientists and Sherpas, they summited Mount Everest to further understanding of climate change in the high mountain systems. And one of the feats that they did when they were up there is they installed the highest weather station on Earth, on top of Mount Everest. And there's explorers like Azo Raskin, a mathematician in dark matter physics. Azo was co-founder of the Earth Species Project and the Center for Humane Technology. He also uses machine learning to decode animal language, from cows to dolphins to monkeys and beyond. And if successful, these efforts would transform the way humans engage in the natural world. And if you're looking for someone to either thank or complain about your infinite scrolling on your devices, Azo was part of that innovation. And there's also explorer Morai Jaw, a space environmentalist and astrodynamicist. Try to say that a couple times. Whereby it's helping the world to understand orbital space is a finite resource in need of protection Because of all the objects we put up there, like satellites can stay for a very, very long time or forever. He's working to calculate and aggregate data using machine learning to better assess the so-called space junk and who is responsible for it. The Society is equally laser-focused on igniting the next generation of explorers that steward for our planet. We're encouraging young people around the world through initiatives like our Young Explorers program, which supports change makers in their early careers, and our Slingshot Challenge competition, which invites 13 to 18-year-olds to submit a 1-minute video outlining a novel and innovative solution to an environmental problem in their own communities. It's energizing to see these upcoming stewards of our planet dreaming big and demanding change. And as we know, innovation never stops. So we have a whole new chapter in store, bringing the Society's impact to a next level. As we speak, we're reimagining our headquarters in Washington, D.C., transforming our campus into our new home of the explorer. Our reimagined campus will become state-of-the-art, a DC destination opening in 2026, so we can engage a million more people with our mission and our work with our explorers in person and virtually. Now, in closing, I think a quote by Sir Arthur C. Clarke, which was, "The only way to discover limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible." It is relevant today as much as it was when he first phrased it. In 2001, Sir Arthur Clarke had a feature in the National Geographic magazine called Beyond Gravity. In it, Clarke talked about witnessing an experiment on weightlessness, as the belief was that one day there would be travels to other worlds. That was in 1939, 3 decades before the first moon landing. He closes with an article with the idea that future space travel, including orbiting of Mars, which is already in existence today. Innovators shape our future. At National Geographic, we have learned to trust the innovators' vision, empower them, fund them, champion them, create an ecosystem they can thrive in, give them opportunities to collaborate, and celebrate them a lot. Thank you very much.
And now, to introduce the Imagination in Service to Society awardee, please welcome a professor at the University of California, San Diego in the Department of Neurosciences and director of the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination, Dr. Eric Virey.
Good evening. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Walda and the Foundation Board for allowing me this privilege. And as the board and Walda always know, when I get up with the microphone, I get to talk about Arthur C. Clarke. So Clarke was an icon of the 20th century, as we've heard, but his personal story is perhaps even more relevant to tonight's award winner. So Sir Arthur was a healthy man, and he helped in the British establishment during World War II and thought about traveling to space, as we've heard about. But Sir Arthur also had different romantic proclivities than the common people in society. And he suffered the opprobrium of the English society because of that. And in fact, he left England in the mid-1950s, perhaps partly because of how the society thought and looked at him. He was an other. He did travel the world and was an underwater explorer. In fact, he was one of the first people to use the aqualung invented by Jacques Cousteau for underwater exploration, which he did because he thought that would give him an experience of what it would like to be flying in space. Importantly, Clarke was a diver, was a healthy man, and had missions and plans. And then in 1962, he was stricken with polio and became paralyzed, and so was unable to complete the underwater explorations that he had planned on. So he, through an unanticipated event, medical event in his life, lost much of his mobility. In the early 1960s, he was awarded contracts for some of his most famous books, perhaps my personal favorite, Rendezvous with Rama, and also my other personal favorite, Profiles of the Future, a nonfiction view of what science would be in the future. So with these views of society, with these changes to his body, with these things that happened to him, Clark entered this incredible era of imagination in his writing, and ultimately leading to the filming of 2001: A Space Odyssey. And for you space aficionados and HAL 9000 people out there, your homework assignment is to do the sequel of 2001, 2010, where we learn a little bit more about HAL 9000 and why he did what he did. And in fact, there's a cameo of Sir Arthur in 2010. So your homework, I am a professor, so I have to assign homework. So your homework assignment is to watch 2010: A Space Odyssey. So Sir Arthur is highly relevant to our awardee this evening. So Dr. Nnedi Okorafor is the inspired writer of a new era of science fiction called African futurism, and is well known for many, many books in this genre. However, my favorite book of Dr. Okorafor is her own story, the story of her own life, called Broken Places and Outer Spaces. And I noted that it was dedicated to her mother, Dr. Helen Okorafor. So Nnedi shared with me that being a PhD was a big thing in their family, and of course, they earned and received a PhD in English literature. So Nnedi, I know your mother is extremely proud of you for that, but perhaps far more proud of all the accomplishments you've made in the service of your craft, which includes so many wonderful things, perhaps most notably the Binti series, and a little shameless plug for the University of California at San Diego. We are the host of the Clarion Science Fiction Writers Workshop, which Dr. Okorafor was a student in and got a scholarship before it was at UCSD. Dr. Nnedi has won many awards, the notable science fiction awards, the Hugo and Nebula Awards, and importantly, not only for adult science fiction, but also for youth science fiction, reaching out to audiences of all ages and interests. But I think the biggest award is in the offing, getting your book made into a multi-part series. So we're anxiously waiting for that, Nebi. We want to see it. So with that, I would like to say congratulations, Dr. Nnedi Okorafor. We appreciate your service.
Please welcome this year's recipient of the Clark Award for Imagination in Service to Society, Dr. Nnedi Okorafor.
It is with great pleasure the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation bestows upon Dr. Nnedi Okorafor its Imagination in Service to Society Award. The award is for unforgettable speculative fiction and African futurism for youth and adults.
Bonsoir. Thank you so much. The award is beautiful, and I'd like to thank the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation for this award. It's such a great honor, and also Arthur C. Clarke for just being Arthur C. Clarke. Yes, you can clap. So I write African-based science fiction. African futurism, one word, no capital F. I coined this term because I felt the concept needed a name to be understood. African futurism is concerned with visions of the future, is interested in technology, leaves the earth, skews optimistic, and is centered and predominantly written by people of African descent, Black people. It is rooted first and foremost in African-originated culture, people, politics, and points of view. It's less concerned with what could have been and more with what is, can, and will be. It acknowledges and grapples with and carries what has been. So I was an avid reader, but I didn't start writing African futurism because of anything that I read previously. I read many types of things, however, and I didn't feel like science fiction was really the place for me. I couldn't relate to it. It wasn't accessible. I started writing African futurism because of my family trips to Nigeria. I was born and raised in the United States. Both of my parents were born and raised in Nigeria, and from a young age, they started taking my siblings and me back to Nigeria to reconnect with our family, our culture, the land, and so on. These trips bolstered and solidified my identity and my point of view as a Nigerian American, as a Niger-American, one word also. Before I started writing when I was 20. I was very much an observer, an unconscious collector of interesting happenings, a curious and conscious witness with an eye and an ear for trouble in particular, the forbidden, the conflicting, social energy. If there was a hint that I was a writer, that I'd be a writer, it was in those things. As I got older, I started noticing and understanding a lot more. In particular, I started noticing technology, specifically went to cell phones, as soon as cell phones showed up. When we would visit Nigeria, the first half of the visit would be to the very futuristic mega city of Lagos. And then the second half of our trip would be to my parents' ancestral villages in the southeast. These were villages where huge mansions were built, but they wouldn't have electricity or running water due to a lack of infrastructure. There was also lush farmland and forests that looked like jungle to my American eyes. And within this, because there was no running water, girls from the village would go out and collect the day's water from streams. And that's a very traditional African practice, right? It's a very traditional African image. I'd see palm wine tappers shimmy up palm trees to collect palm sap from buckets that they'd placed there just days before at the tree's crown. Then in the early 2000s, I started noticing the same scenario, but with one difference: cell phones. Chargeable handheld supercomputers were showing up in a part of the world where the infrastructure for electricity and running water was still spotty. Interesting. Now I was seeing these same girls collecting the water as usual, but holding their cell phones away so the phones wouldn't get wet. I'd see palm wine tappers leaning back on their leather belts high in the tree to check their phones. I started thinking about all of these things, and in particular, I started thinking about what would the future be like in this place? I wasn't seeing this point of view reflected in literature. I wasn't seeing these visions or imaginings of the future and possibilities anywhere. And I wanted to read about these things. I wanted to see these things explored and brought to life in narrative. So when I didn't find it, well, I started writing it. And so this was my arrival at science fiction. The need to see what the future would be like in these specific places in Africa, our own Indiazog, Nigeria, led me to start speculating about broader things through a lens born from my hybrid Nigerian-American cultural identity, blended with my unique strain of curiosity and imagination. What if most cars in Nairobi were autonomous? What if aliens with powerful technology landed in Botswana? What if a robot was built in Ghana by a girl who'd never been outside of her small town? What if the Sahara Desert became the world's greatest source of infinite green energy, the sun? I actually explored that in my novel, Noor. What if an AI built and taught by South Africans became president of Nigeria? It's possible. How would Niger change if it used its uranium for its own needs? I explored this in my novel Shadow Speaker, where Niger used its uranium to create capture stations, cheap portable devices that could pull drinking water from the clouds. I don't care for labels and categories. In general, I find them to be confining and reductive. I usually shy away from them. However, the fact is, names can have power. They snap complex concepts into focus. Where a concept was hard to understand, a name can make it instantly recognizable and understood. And so I offer you African futurism. It's not a new idea, but now it has a name, and I write it. Thank you.
And now to introduce the Lifetime Achievement Awardee, please welcome the Ambassador of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg to the United States, Her Excellency Nicole Bintner-Bakshin.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. I'm going to use a quote to start, which was already used by Michael, but I think it's so potent and so powerful. The only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible. So I think we all agree on that. It is with this quote of Sir Arthur C. Clarke that I am very humbled to introduce you tonight to a person who more than anyone has not only shaped a company and a national strategy, but whose vision and foresight have deeply shaped the satellite industry as a whole. A special honor for me to introduce Romain Bausch, who most of you will know through his visionary work at the helm of SES, Luxembourg Satellite Company. I know Romain will tell you himself about the incredible journey during which he turned SES from a regional startup to a worldwide global powerhouse, from a purely European direct-to-home TV satellite operator to a leading global satellite company with now a fleet of over 70 satellites in GEO and MEO orbits, and with a diverse offering going far beyond video distribution. So on my part, I would like to tell you why it is so special for me as Luxembourg's ambassador to the United States to have the privilege to introduce Romain Bausch. Throughout his life, Romain has always taken a long-term strategic perspective. At the heart of this perspective was the development of Luxembourg, the country he so faithfully served at the beginning of his career as a civil servant in the noblest sense of the word at the Ministry of Finance, and then as CEO and president of SES, and in other important positions to the country, not the least of which in his current role as president of the Advisory Board on Public Finances. You imagine an important role. So his leadership did not only shape SES, but it shaped Luxembourg's economy and the country's identity as a whole. And I would like to quote former Prime Minister Juncker. The cornerstone to the SES success story was set with a firm and hopeful belief in the future of a new Luxembourg. Or, as some of our American friends like to say, Luxembourg is bigger in space than on Earth. Today, SES, headquartered in Luxembourg, is a global company, and I know some of our colleagues are here tonight, so a special welcome to them, with a significant presence in the US, which accounts for an important part of its business. Little would we have dared to imagine that. So with SES at its core, the country has been growing a space industry centered on creating vibrant and welcoming ecosystems for space companies, and realizing that space exploration can only be done through solid partnerships and strong cooperation, Luxembourg was one of the 8 founding nations of the Artemis Accords. But we are here to speak about Romain. So when I asked, and a few personal things which are interesting, when I asked some of his colleagues about his leadership style and his recipe for success, 2 answers came back consistently. First, his insatiable desire to learn and understand every side of an issue. He left nothing to chance. And second, his calm, patient, and respectful demeanor and the empathy for his colleagues, for whom he has always had a friendly word. And I think that's what you will experience tonight. These qualities, combined to his long-term perspective, define the remarkable and visionary leader whom Romain Bausch has been for almost half a century now, even though I don't want to make him any older than he is. Sir Arthur C. Clarke was convinced that it was our personal responsibility to use all our abilities to imagine and shape the future. I say that Romain Bausch has fully embodied these principles throughout his career and keeps on living them every day. Thank you, Romain, for all that you have done, for your hard work, your dedicated vision, the lasting on your country, but also on humanity whole, connecting billions. Einstein said, like riding a bicycle, to keep your balance, you must keep moving. I am sure I will keep moving and inspiring many of us. Congratulations for being a proud and deserving recipient of the Sir Arthur C. Clarke Lifetime Achievement. Thank you.
Please welcome year's recipient of the Clarke Award for Lifetime Achievement, Romain Bausch.
For our final award this evening, it is the honor of the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation to award its Lifetime Achievement Award to Romain Bausch for leadership and commitment to extending the benefits of satellite communications around the world.
Sorry, but Ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, I'm deeply honored to stand before you today and accept the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation. This recognition carries a profound significance, not just for me as an individual, but as a representative of the incredible journey we have undertaken in the satellite industry. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Foundation for this prestigious award, and I wish to share with you the reasons why this moment resonates so deeply with me. Sir Arthur Clarke was a true game changer, and his groundbreaking work in the 1940s on the concept of geostationary rocket stations for global radio wave broadcasting laid the foundation for today's satellite industry. He was one of those remarkable individuals who had the ability to reshape people's perspective and redefine reference terms. The idea of geostationary satellite may seem obvious in hindsight, but it took a creative mind to calculate, conceptualize, and introduce this groundbreaking idea based on scientific principles. Regrettably, I never had the privilege to meet Sir Arthur in person, and I can only speculate on his thoughts about the Foundation's choice of awardee. However, 2 decades ago, on SES's 20th birthday in 2005, we had the privilege of screening a video message from Sir Arthur recorded in Sri Lanka. In his message, he reflected on his research and the impact of his idea of extraterrestrial relays. He expressed his astonishment at how this initial idea had flourished to the point where he was regarded as the godfather for communication satellites. He lauded SES for driving the market and serving as a key innovator in the industry. His recognition extended to Luxembourg, a nation he believed possessed the vision and determination to advance human communication through satellite technology. So today, as we reflect on the satellite industry, on SES, and on the remarkable individuals who contributed to its success, we also remember our home country ambassador, Luxembourg. While Luxembourg might not be the first nation that comes to mind when thinking about space, its unique strengths and strategies have left an indelible mark on the communication industry. Why Luxembourg, you might ask? In part, it stems from the fact that due to the size, so small is beautiful from time to time, due to the size, Luxembourg has always relied on international investments and on open borders for economic growth. In media and communication, this approach has been combined with the intelligent use of sovereign rights granted to nations. It first took shape in 1930, when the state of Luxembourg granted a group of private international investors the right to use terrestrial frequencies, paving the way for the launch of the first commercial radio station in Europe, Radio Luxembourg. Terrestrial TV was added in the mid-50s, and when most European countries opened the commercial TV stations in the 70s and 80s, RTL expanded its presence throughout the continent. Around the same time, the satellite technology entered the picture. While many viewed Luxembourg's space ambitions as overly ambitious for a small nation, successive governments pursued the vision to expand radio and TV distribution on a larger scale. It all began with a few innovative and some might say crazy ideas, like using frequent bands differently from what has been used so far, launching satellites with a larger number of transponders than what others did, co-locating satellites at one and the same orbital position, and marketing small 60-centimeter dishes. With this innovative approach, SES pioneered direct-to-home television via satellite in Europe, and it served as a model for other markets worldwide, including the US, where Dish and DirecTV were launched. So, for example, Charlie Ergen always said he was looking at SES for really developing his Dish business. Rupert Murdoch in 1988, Rupert Murdoch's Sky Television became our first customer. By the mid-90s, digital technology replaced analog transmissions, and the satellite landscape was populated with hundreds of channels in various languages. Allow me to highlight here the concept of the public-private partnership, which I consider to be one of the reasons for success, both for the company and for myself. The relationship is built upon the concession agreement granted by the state of Luxembourg to SES for the use of orbital positions and frequencies, and supported by a minority investment from two Luxembourg state banks. I joined the board of SES at the beginning of the 90s as the chairman of one of these banks. Later, when I accepted the position of CEO in 1995, the institutional experience I had gained at the Ministry of Finance over 20 years at national, European, and international levels proved invaluable in transitioning from an industry to an industry which has numerous interactions with national and international organizations. The Arthur C. Clarke Foundation Lifetime Award recognizes imaginative thinking that leads to initiatives with significant positive impact and promise for society. When reflecting on the contribution I might have made to achieve such ambitious goals, the following key steps come to my mind. First, the strategic decision we embarked upon to transition SES from a purely European DTH operator to a global satellite communication company with diversified offerings. This fundamental change in the company's positioning resulted in the investment in new orbit positions, in multiple additional satellites, and the acquisition of in other parts of the world, as GE Americom in the US in 2001, and later on in 2006, guys, a spin-off of Intelsat with global coverage. Thereafter, in 2009, SES invested in O3b Networks, a startup planning to operate satellites in medium Earth orbit, a new orbit for commercial satellite operators, allowing for broadband connectivity with low latency like fiber. Today, SES is on the cusp of launching commercial services with the second generation of O3b satellites named O3 mPOWER. Finally, and in order to allow for all of this, we decided as of the mid-90s to switch from a private to a public company. SES's listing on the stock exchange in '98 offered the required flexibility to raise additional capital and to absorb large acquisitions, starting with Americom, which involved offering GE a significant stake in the enlarged entity. At that time, the value of GE Americom represented 2/3 of the value of SES at that time. So you see, this was quite a large transaction. But the arrival of GE also allowed us to instill strong and transparent corporate governance, fostering positive relations with stakeholders. More generally, the satellite landscape has transformed significantly since the late 80s. What was once the domain of intergovernmental organizations for broadcasting and telecommunication services is now predominantly managed by commercial operators. In addition to geostationary satellites, lower orbit are crowded with satellites providing network, navigation, and Earth observation services to governments and commercial users for fixed and mobile applications. Deep-pocketed investors like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, two awardees also of this foundation, deploy large satellite constellations, Starlink and Kuiper, to provide low-latency broadband internet connectivity, and they are obviously playing in another league than the traditional satellite operators. Yet, these advancements come with their own set of challenges. Space has become an arena of strategic and military competition between nations to a much greater extent than in the past. For example, today we heard on the radio that President Putin is proposing a stronger cooperation between China and Russia in space and in the satellite business. So all of this is getting much more competitive. Additionally, the proliferation of man-made objects in Earth's orbit forces us to address challenges such as orbital congestion and space debris management with a greater sense of responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, because of this award, in the last weeks, I have been asked a couple of times what motivated me to work with such commitment to SES over a quite long period. My short answer is that I have been thrilled in connecting people. What an excitement and satisfaction it is to extend the provision of content that entertains, educates, or protects populations and drives business forward. The investment in O3b satellite network designed to bring connectivity to the other 3 billion people who lack reliable access to communication systems is probably the best testimony thereof. Another heartwarming example of positive impact for society was obviously after the fall of the Berlin Wall, when SES satellites allowed millions of people in Eastern Germany and in Eastern European countries to have access to national and international public and commercial TV stations. Ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, allow me to conclude by once again expressing my gratitude to the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation for this Lifetime Achievement Award. This award is not just a tribute to my humble contribution to extend the benefits of satellite communications worldwide. As I tried to explain, it is a recognition of the collective efforts of the space industry, of SAS, of the exceptional individuals I had the privilege to work with, and some of them are here today, as well as to the forward-looking decision makers of the state of Luxembourg who made all of this possible. I hope that my speech allowed you to better appreciate the positive impact our initiatives might have had on the society. And thanks for your attention.
Thank you all for your insights and your remarks. I now have the pleasure of welcoming to the stage the moderator of the Clark Conversation on Imagination and the voice you've been hearing coming from behind the curtain, broadcaster Bill Scanlon. Let's give him a welcome.
Thank you and good evening. Congratulations to all of our honorees tonight for some pretty spectacular work. Now we get to the fun part, the conversation. And that's what this is. It's a conversation between me and our three guests, but it's also with you as well, because I promise you we will be opening the floor for comments or questions. There will be plenty, I'm sure, that we don't address in our conversation, and really nothing's off limit. But I hope that we get some good questions from the audience. So here in the next 45 or 50, Pam and George will have the microphones, and we'll come around. And what an opportunity really for us, folks, because the future is sitting with us with our honorees in terms of the future of literature, science fiction, certainly the future of communications and space technology, and an organization that's defined in a way the future of discovery. Those discoveries have found our future. So yes, it's a conversation about artificial intelligence, but we want to make that as broad as possible. And the topic, which you probably saw in your program tonight, is how do we navigate a positive future for Earth dwellers in an AI and advanced tech world? Man, that's a heavy subject right there. But we'll explore elements of that. But I wanted to start, and just so you know, I'm not sandbagging Dr. Okorafor here. She knows I'm going to ask this question. So I was looking through her social media the other day, and her cool-looking cats that she's got a lot of photos of, and other cool animals. So Nettie, I'm going to start with you because I saw a social media post of yours that had me both chuckling and nodding my head in agreement. You posted a photograph that I don't think you took this photograph.
No.
And it's the marquee on a very ordinary looking old building. And the marquee says, "I bet aliens ride past Earth and lock their doors." And Dr. Okorafor's comment was, "Yep." I wanted to ask you as we start, is that comment more about your view of sort of a current situation or a peek into how you view our future?
Yeah, it was it was a little bit of both. A little bit of both. It was, of course, it's tongue in cheek, okay, but at the same time, I felt when I posted that there are some things going on right now around the world where it's clear that humanity is not showing its best face right now, and we're not treating ourselves very well. We're not treating each other very well. And so, like, when I saw that image, it made me definitely think, yeah, alien, know what I'm seeing. I'm flying past this Earth. I wouldn't want to come and say hi. I would just keep right on going because, as I said, humanity, we're not treating each other very well. So how are we going to treat aliens if they were to come?
That might be a good starting point, just pessimistic on the future of planet Earth. Michael, if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about humanity, the same thing that humans are doing to the climate and everything, the we're doing to our planet. You know, we're out of balance right now when it comes to our resources. We're using 3 times more resources today than we're able to replenish in 1 year, and that's not sustainable. So I get the tongue-in-cheek comment about don't stop here, but we need to, you know, we need to look for solutions and find solutions. And I know we're going to talk about AI later, but that's the tool in the exploration toolkit to find those solutions.
And Roman?
Yeah, I think it's the same line. We should really think about the common sense approach based on core values, which we are about to lose. Simply to mention a few, and it's quite dramatic, I think, to say this clearly, democracy. It's not really something which today has a favor in our world. So when aliens look at this, maybe they have to search for a while before they see democratic values. Individual freedoms, maybe that's still okay, but respect of human rights, I think, is another huge problem. Not to speak about what's going on in different parts of the world. We are really, I think you are not even speaking about human rights, but you are simply speaking about respect of human lives. And it's quite dramatic. Yeah, probably when you look at the Earth from the outside, you might really pass by.
Well, can we do both things? Can we both embrace new technology, advanced technology like artificial intelligence and the latest technology like that, and fix planet Earth, things that aren't right on planet Earth?
Yes, I strongly think so. I think that the solutions will come from the same place. You know, it comes from a goodness. Even so, the solution for how to use the new technology, and the solution for how we treat each other, and the solution for how we treat the planet, those all come from the same place: a goodness, a respect. Just an acknowledgement of those things around you, and understanding the value of life and outside of yourself. I think it all comes from the same place. So yeah, I think those solutions are all definitely possible.
Before I even told Walda I'd like to host this, when she asked, I've been thinking in the months ahead about the whole concept of AI, artificial intelligence, and wondering myself if the I part of that, the intelligence part, we overlook the human inquisitiveness, we overlook inspiration, we overlook innovation in technology. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. That comes later, unfortunately, right? It always starts with what's the solution and how do we get there? Because the intelligence isn't about emotion, as you say. So when AI is used to develop certain products or certain solutions, or even if you chat with it, it doesn't have that emotional connection. It starts with an answer that it believes is right from its learning, void of a human emotion. And it'll catch up, but that's I think where we're at right now.
Roman?
Yeah, maybe coming from the industry, I think we should nonetheless really underline the positive impact this will have on productivity, on economic growth, on opportunities. So definitely a lot of positives on the economic side. The negatives or the challenges are more, if you want, on the human side, on the political side. And yes, hopefully there will be a balance, but I'm not so sure. You know, one of the problems I think of our time, maybe it was always so in the past, is that long-term problems today need solutions that are not very popular with people and with voters. So if you think about climate change mitigation, or thinking about my public finance hat, if you think about in Europe about aging of the population and financing of pension schemes, all of these are problems that are not really tackled by the political environment. And so it's about a little bit the same about artificial intelligence. Hopefully, timely, there will be the challenges, the regulation will be put in place, and we will not wait too long before we put a framework to this development of artificial intelligence, in particular when we make the step to general artificial intelligence.
How do you think because I know your company had been involved with the spreading of global satellites and expanding broadband into areas of the world, very, very remote areas of the world. And we talk here in this country about digital deserts, and it's not just this country, but other parts of the world. You've had some success with that. How important is that in the larger scheme of spreading technology, whether it be artificial intelligence or other technology?
Yeah, I think it's key. If you want to educate people, if you want really to have the knowledge being spread, you need to have a mean of access of communication to all the people, and not to have deserts, be it in countries like the US or be it on different continents. So what we really, I think, doesn't think of what I've done is that we brought connectivity, for example, with OCB to islands in the Pacific who had no broadband at all. And suddenly, with a beam being put over a small island, and then with terrestrial network being linked, there was broadband available to the people on the island. Same thing in countries in Africa where we are present. So I think all of this is very important, and clearly artificial intelligence will further help develop solutions to be put in place.
I hope I'm not reading too much into your comments a few minutes ago when you talked about looking for the kinds of things that looked in the future of Africa and elsewhere, and you didn't find it, so you started to write it. So getting back to, you saw the possibility, you created your own possibility in that. Do you think the rest of the world needs to have a little bit of that confidence, that leap of faith to get to that next step?
Oh, certainly. I think that's actually really important. That's that idea of participating in the global think tank, in the global dreaming, the looking at possibilities, because even now, a lot of our technologies continue to be created and driven by very specific parts of the world, very specific communities. And one of the things that I'm always thinking about is, there are a whole bunch of things that are swirling in my mind because I'm still thinking about other questions, like the other part of that we've been talking about. But one of the things that I'm always talking about is that that need to create. When technologies are created, those who create the technologies are creating technologies for themselves, for their world, their communities, the things that they know what they need, and so therefore they're creating these technologies to address what they need. And then other parts of the world that didn't create anything are taking those things, figuring out how to use them for themselves. But I think that this idea of, if we have more people from around the world, different cultures creating technologies, I feel like we'll have more. I feel like we'll have many different types of things because people will be kind of creating and imagining technologies from their own point of view, and we'll get different things because of that, because around the world, people need different things. They have different ideas of what's important. And so I've always felt that if we only have a small part of the world that is creating these technologies, we're not using all of humanity.
And as we talked about before the conversation, guys, if you want to jump into what each other says, feel free to
I would love to comment on that because National Geographic has such a long history of exploration, but that exploration was done by primarily North Americans that were traveling into other countries to do that exploration and bring it back to diffuse knowledge. Now, as you heard one of our trustees say, that over 50% of our grants now are to women, and 60% of them are in country now. So we're getting those solutions and those innovators right in their own country who have a really vested interest in protecting their own land, and quite frankly, probably do it a lot better. And if we can help provide those tools through technology, that's all even better.
Your is all about frontiers and discovering the frontiers. Why is it that AI has that sort of feeling of a frontier that is both waiting to be found and feared?
Great question. I think the answer to the first part of the question, that frontier, it's another tool that our explorers can use when they do their research, they do their exploration. They learn faster of what solutions could be out there, and they go through these cycles. They can collaborate through AI with other explorers. You know, the fear is, I think, several, but one is moving too fast, getting to a solution that, you know, isn't quite proven just because AI says it's right. Maybe it isn't right yet for the planet or for the people to adapt. So I think that's, you know, some caution that needs to be taken, or how that information is disseminated. Because as people know, if they've seen the fake news, you can see the fake photos. You know, National Geographic is known for, you know, very fact-based and does its research and before it publishes anything. And now anybody can take one of those photos out of our archive because it's open to the public and modify it. And we need to have tools there that says, wait a minute, that's not really how it was.
Your organization, you're being honored tonight, certainly in Washington, one of the longtime awards going back more than 100 years is the annual Hubbard Award that is given for distinction in exploration scientific discovery. I think the first awardee was Robert Perry in 1906 or something.
That's correct.
President Kennedy, President Teddy Roosevelt.
Presidents used to give the award.
Awarded. So when you look at it, and then people like Jane Goodall, John Glenn, the senator, and astronauts have received this distinguished award. When you look at it, where do you see AI in the use of AI in the world of science and discovery?
Wow. It will be, again, one of those tools that they'll be able to just learn faster and learn about the exploration that they're on and the journey that they're on in that tool. I mean, you know, as I said earlier, I mentioned the article in 1969 about the astronauts that went into space. They were Hubbard Medal winners. They were innovators at that time. You mentioned others, that Jane Goodall. They used technology back then, and that technology will continue to change and adapt, and AI is going to be part of that. And of course, today they're doing incredible things, from using artificial intelligence to help protected areas from poachers. And so those cameras now can track whether it's an animal walking by or a potential poacher, and be able to notify the protected wardens there to be able to go out there so they can manage a much larger population of protected land than they could without it.
Rama, I wanted to find out from you, you've long been in the space and satellite and telecommunications business. How is your business currently using artificial intelligence?
Yeah, maybe one quick comment. I left the CEO position 9 years ago. So I'm probably not today. And second comment, I'm not an engineer. So definitely this is an area where I'm not the most prominent guy to speak about.
But they can recreate you, though.
Yeah, and probably there are people in the room who know it better. No, but when you think about satellites, what's obvious is that you cannot replace hardware, because once you have launched the satellite, it's gone. So it's all about software and about programs. So artificial intelligence will help tremendously, obviously, in order to update all of these programs that you need, for example, for managing the energy on the satellite, as you have really the solar power, which is really allowing the satellite to operate and to establish communication. For the network management, for the traffic forecasting, all of this will obviously tremendously being helped by artificial intelligence. So really, the optimization of operations are being improved. And also, maybe on another area I shortly mentioned, the challenges of debris management. So with the congestion in space, artificial intelligence will definitely help a lot in order to avoid collision, in order really to track debris, in order to remove debris. So for the satellite industry, artificial intelligence will definitely allow a lot of things to happen. The limitations will simply be that you need to have enough data, and you need to have enough bandwidth in order to communicate permanently with the satellite. in order to use these data. But I'm quite optimistic that there will be a technology jump regarding satellite technology.
I confess that I've not read your books, Nettie, but I want to know how much you're dealing with these sorts of issues in your writing.
I'm working on something new, so that's why I paused. But I have written a short story that was about, I'm remembering it right now. It was called Sunrise, and it was about an AI or a personal assistant, because I used to be really obsessed with the concept of intelligent personal assistants that would be on your phone, just helping and chatting with you and just causing trouble and all that kind of stuff. So I wrote this short story where it was you were a personal assistant was downloaded onto your phone when you got onto this flight. It was a Dreamliner airplane, and that was like a complimentary thing that a personal assistant was downloaded onto your phone. And this girl's phone, the personal assistant got a little personal. We'll just put it that way. It got a little personal. So that was one story where, and I've always been interested in artificial intelligence, but real artificial intelligence, not aggregating programs, like and sentience. That's what I've always really been interested in as a science fiction writer, because I think that's where all of the issues that we as human beings have, that's when it's going to really come into play, and it's going to get really fun when that happens. But,
You talked a little bit in your comments about African futurism. What was the genesis of you thinking of that concept? And
I mean, I felt like it was in, I coined the term in 2018, but it was something that I had been thinking about for a while. It was the way that my own work was being viewed and not understood. And it was because I realized it was because a lot of people didn't have the terminology to understand what it was that I was doing. They were viewing everything that I was writing through a very American or Western point of view, and I come at things from a very global point of view, and I needed to get out of that. I needed that framework to just shake off. I needed to shake that off greatly, and I know a lot of other writers needed it as well. And it wasn't so much about the label, it's more of a conversation. I needed there to be a conversation about, especially when it came to Black speculative fiction writers, that we are not a monolith. We are not culturally a monolith. We come from many different cultures, and that's a good thing. And there that about it. So that was really the genesis of it.
I wanted to ask you too, and you can respond to the question I'm going to get to on this. Some of you may have seen a recent New York story. The headline of that story was "The World is Becoming More African." And the extensive piece covered areas of culture, technology, politics, but it's centered on this demographic certainty. Quote, by 2050, 1 in 4 people on the planet will be African. A seismic change that he started to register. But getting into that, reading about technology in particular, the New York Times wrote this, that, quote, but on technology, the story points out, not long ago, technology was the big idea for enabling Africa to leapfrog its way out of poverty. Startups sprouted in countries like Nigeria, South Africa, and Morocco. Innovative technologies like M-Pesa brought mobile banking to tens of millions of people. Women-only coding schools emerged. Microsoft and Google established major centers in Kenya, the self-styled Silicon Savannah of East Africa. And they said, but while technology brought billions in investment, it failed dismally on one front. How sure that AI, how concerned I should say, are you that AI is not just another technology that may pass not only Africa, but other disproportionately poor areas of the world by?
First, I'm thinking about why, when they say that it didn't create jobs, I don't really know the foundation of that. So I'm wondering about that. I'm going to think about that one. That's a heavy one when it comes to AI and because there are all sorts of issues with artificial intelligence and where that's going. I'm not really sure even how to answer that, because I think it's more complex than is AI going to provide, like, is there going to be an issue with jobs and then there's a question of poverty in Africa. There's a lot of wealth in Africa. It's just it's very complex. Like, all of that is it's all very complicated. Like, I don't even know how I would answer that, because there's so many layers and elements that I'd have to look at to even analyze how to boil it down to something simple.
I guess on a broader question is on technology jobs, period, here in the US and elsewhere, are those jobs just going to the elite few who are educated in elite places, or is there a fairness to the spread of jobs around the world?
Yeah, I can only speculate on that. I think the comment from Africa's standpoint is they use the word leapfrog. It leapfrogs such a huge gap in technology. And you think about, I live on a farm, so I'll use one of the very first innovations was the plow, right? You had many people working in the field, and then suddenly the plow comes and one farmer can do what 20 can do in one day. But then they moved out and they did other jobs, right? They were bakers, they were other jobs that came up over the years, and then population, but it was a gradual growth. And you leapfrog something so big as this technology in a country that is still developing and poverty and wants to really support itself. I think that was the big challenge there. And then I think it is. There's the elite that just got more elite. I think that just separated that gap. And I think to a certain extent that's happening here as well in the United States with this technology. And therefore, I think there's the need to regulate, which this guy knows a little bit about.
No, coming back to something you said much earlier, Nidhi, it's really that you said that parts of Africa would be left aside. What I see in the world and in the future is really that there will be multiple regions in the world where technology will develop. And so I see a more equal spread of this worldwide, including Africa. Obviously, there will be huge problems resulting from climate change, and that's another story. But if you look really at this spread of technology, I'm much positive that this will really also reach other regions in the world, and in particular, as you said, really build with the demographic expansion of Africa, there will be a lot of dynamics on that continent.
We could have covered this earlier, but I wanted to go around the three of you and hear one a little different tangent. Who or what inspires you daily in terms of your life and career? What are some of those? Who are some of those people?
Wow. You know, we have 6,000 active explorers, and it's like you love them all the same, but there are just some that are just so iconic to me. Bob Ballard comes to mind. Bob Ballard was he discovered the Titanic wreck, and he did that under a very interesting disguise of a National Geographic expedition when he was actually working for the Navy to find two subs that were lost during the Cold War. And that's somebody who used unbelievable innovation, but he did it with a crew also of women, and women scientists were on board with them, which was in 1983, I think it was unimaginable. So, he had that kind of vision of technology, but also a diversity that made his expedition so successful.
Nettie, where do you find your inspiration? Who is that?
I don't know. I think I find a lot of inspiration from scientists, and especially the really specific stuff that I just stumble across. It's not that I'm doing any particular research, but I'll just stumble across something where I'm like, wow, that's really cool. Like, there was one, I can't remember the details right now, but there was one scientist who was working on just that connection between the brain and technology, where they were able to make someone walk again. It was a New York Times article. There was a vegetable heart that was created. It was like in a box. It was a 3D printed vegetable heart, and stuff like that. I find as a writer, but also just as a person, I find that very inspiring. Also watching activists do what activists do, and watching people just get out and address a lot of really powerful immediate, timely social situations, watching them find the bravery and the courage to do what they do. I find that really inspiring as well. There's a lot to be inspired.
On the scientist end, correct me if I'm wrong, you briefly had an interest in getting into entomology,
yes.
correct?
Yes, I did.
And some of that's reflected in the posts that you have on your
Always.
on your
It's,
social media.
Once you have that kind of thing, because I wanted to be an entomologist from the time I was like 6 years old. I love bugs. I've always loved bugs. I've wanted to study them like very closely in particular.
Not your kind, the bug.
Not
bug.
the computer, even though there are bugs in computer, those are pretty cool. I'd like to study those. But I've always wanted to do that. And becoming a writer, definitely, it didn't stamp out. It's definitely something I still do. You can see it.
Romain, where do you find your inspiration?
Yeah, a lot of inspiration from different angles. Maybe here I want to limit myself to the satellite business and to look at people who might inspire me in the satellite business. And then clearly there are people like Elon Musk that come to your mind, because he is really leapfrogging the words that was used here, satellite technology, be it for the launchers, be it for the satellite constellations. And it's inspiring, but it's also frightening, because you really ask yourself, where's the limit and what's the final goal of all of this? For example, when speaking before to the guys from Marianas Bus on the launch vehicles, when I think back in our times, we used diverse launchers from Europe, Ariane from the US, from Russia, Proton. And nowadays, more than 80-90% of all the launches in the world are done by one firm, by Elon Musk. So up to date, from 2023 to date, he has already 8 these launches, meaning he's launching rockets every third or every fourth day. So just crazy things. So that's clearly inspirational, but as I said, it's also a little bit...
On the inspiration, and on the other end of that, how often do each of you in your world, how often does somebody write you and say, oh my gosh, I read this, or I saw Black Panther, where you did the Black comic book, or I'm going to watch that thing on Hulu, or I saw what you did with SES, and I want to get into the satellite world, or I got National Geographic for years and it inspired me. How often do you hear those stories from people?
Oh, with National Geographic, always. And we always get in my grandmother's cabin or my grandmother's house,
Yes.
I always go, we don't take those back. Those magazines are permanent. They're not returnable. But we do something when employees start at National Geographic. We say, what's your story? And it's true. It's like, where did you come from? What's your background? But what inspired you to come work for National Geographic? And just hearing that from employees, they're coming to work for a mission, that they've had a connection before they even came there. And I tell people, when you go to an organization like National Geographic that has this mission for 135 years, after a while, you start to protect the mission, you become the mission, and you come in every day to serve it. And so that's what inspires me to come every day, is the employees too.
That must be one of the most affirming things as a writer, is hearing back from the people who read your work.
Yeah, it's actually overwhelming when that happens. It's because when you're writing something, you're quiet, you're in your own enclosed place, just typing it, and you're not really thinking about that. And then you put it out in the world, and then suddenly you're getting all of this response to it, and it's overwhelming, and it feels good. It does feel good.
Good.
It does feel good, but it's also, it's unexpected though.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have it when you're on Hulu, right?
I'm not thinking about
To be
that.
fair. All right, so this is obviously Washington, so we do need to get into government regulation of AI. It wouldn't be a complete topic. So I think it was last Monday, building on last year's AI Bill of Rights, the White House issued a comprehensive executive order on technology. They've been focusing on it much more intensely this year with some of the issues with ChatGPT, et cetera. Each of you, what do you think the role of government should be, here in the US in particular, in regulating AI?
I would say the first hope, but I believe it will not happen, is really that regulation will be done and,
Worldwide.
Yeah, and that there will be an international regulation in place. But I'm afraid this might not really be what's happening. And you have such diverse approaches that you mentioned, the White House. You also have the initiative from the UK, which is on the other side of really being relatively unregulated or asking for an unregulated environment. You have in the middle of this, if you want, Europe, or the European Union, where the European Parliament has developed a concept which will still have to be discussed at ministerial level with a very rigid regulation to be put in place. And then maybe on the other extreme, you have China, where clearly there is a regulation in place. And so my wish would simply be that this will go beyond national regulations and there will be a broader approach to all of this.
But it gets back to one of those problems, and I'll hear from both of you, but it gets back to one of those issues that the world can't come together on. So far, anyway. It's early in the game, perhaps.
Yeah.
Michael, what are your...
Yeah, it'll definitely be a challenge to go global, and I agree. I wish that does happen. I think on one of the roles of regulation that I'd like to touch on is really the education. I think people have different levels of what is artificial intelligence. I'm not an expert, and I don't know if any of us are, but there's misinformation out there of what it is, and people are afraid of it, and some people are embracing it, and you just hear how it's being used in different ways. So I think part of the government's role is to really help educate. What is it really, and what should we know about it, and not be afraid of it. And I think that's where there's a lot of divide in people. They're just afraid of what it's going to do to them and their job, but they don't really understand it yet. So I think that's one of the rules from the regulation that has to happen.
Nettie?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, as you just said, I'm not an expert on, on artificial intelligence, but one of the questions that rolls around in my head is when we're talking about regulation, I start thinking, well, who has access to the unregulated stuff? Who's going to have access to that? And the existence of it, the fact that someone has access to it puts whoever has access to it in a powerful position. And then we're just back at that place that we always end up, where there's something that's super powerful that some people have access to and others don't. So I'm all for regulating, but I still have that question of access and who has access, and what does that mean for the rest of society?
I've been wondering, even before this too, we have a number of young folks here tonight, and younger folks watching our live stream tonight may look at an oldster like me and start rolling their eyes and clicking their tongue when raising concerns over new technology, whereas the kids and your generation are so much more at ease with new technologies. Are we overthinking a little bit or over-worrying the potential downside of AI? That's to the floor.
Oh, I thought that was
Jump in.
that was rhetorical. I have kids. They're older than you. They used to be the ones to program the remote for me or load this thing. So I know where you're coming from. I don't think so. I think this is it's a huge change in the way that we are operating now, and because it doesn't just affect the young people, it affects all age groups. And there's good and there's also some very evil things that can be done by the 1 or 2% or less than that, but they could be very impactful. So
it does feel like we go through a freak out phase on new technology, right?
We do.
But to be fair, also we haven't figured out even the privacy issues with social media. So.
And also there's the question of, what is AI taught on? Like, what is it learning from? Right. And the issue of copyright, and as a creative, this is an issue for me. I think that that most writers will agree that having their work be used to teach AI is, without our permission, is highly problematic. It's copyrighted material. Those regulations need to be put in place. They don't need to be discussed or kind of put on the side, because I've been on panels where we've talked about this, and I've talked about this with AI people, we'll just put it that way. And that was very minimalized, and as a creative, that's not a minimal thing to have my work fed through something so so it learns me. That's very problematic, and I'm not even being paid at all, which I wouldn't even accept payment for that, because so I think that needs to be taken very, very seriously.
But is that another one too, that we've been very loose sometimes on copyright, that
Yes.
social media in particular allows the creation of memes, et cetera, where creators like yourself and many millions of others are not compensated for that work?
I mean, I think there's well, guys, this is just a thing for me. I think there's we're talking, okay, a meme that takes a picture that's been passed around versus like a whole movie, for example, or a whole novel. I think those are two different things.
Yeah.
I think those things need to be taken very seriously. And a lot of the books that AI are on are pirated books. So it's like, that problem of piracy has been something that we've all known about, and we all kind of, me as a writer, I have to accept it and deal with it, but that's been a problem, and I think AI is gonna multiply the problem. Like, a lot of the problems that we're talking about are problems that have existed before AI was an issue.
Do we think that are we getting ourselves in a situation where the cow is out of the barn? That we may have to do corrective regulation for things such as Nettie's pointing out obviously, the downsides, the real downside of AI.
Yeah. Well, that corrective is already happening. I mean, it's happening through other technologies that are doing that. That's National Geographic signed on with Adobe's, which has a software that will validate whether a image has been altered, because it'll keep its history of record. So they always use the example of, here's a picture of the pyramids in Egypt, on a beautiful day, and then the next picture is that same photograph but with dark clouds above it. The third picture is snow on the ground. Of course, that could never happen, but it looks real. But through the Adobe software, which they're offering it open source to any editing software, will tell you each one of those change of images, so how it was changed. And they'll do a little icon to say that this has gone through a kind of a validation process. So they're not trying to say if there's a picture out there that if it doesn't have that icon, it's not real or not. But if it does have it on there, then you can actually see that change. So I think that's what's happened. Software is coming up to try to put the cow. I love the metaphor about a barn and a farm, but kind of put the cows and the horses back in the barn somewhat through protection.
I want to ask the three of you too. During Walda's comments about the HAL 9000 challenge, I noted that she raised a couple of questions. How do we ensure that AI, in this pivotal point of its development, does not harm us, that it does not replace humans, dampen our creativity, or undermine economic and humanistic systems that are central to who we are? Big question, but Ramon, you want to respond to some of that?
No, for me, the big question is really the geopolitical environment in which, or during which time the artificial intelligence is being developed. So I think the problem, personally, I look at artificial intelligence not as a problem in itself, but it's really the environment and the time it's developed. So probably it's one of the worst time where it can happen now. And I'm really worried about the use or the misuse of artificial intelligence for political reasons. And this can, then we are not speaking about copyrights or things like that, but we are really speaking about what's true and what's false. And then humanity might be in a very difficult situation, because there will be so many truths around, and so many people will live according to their truths, and that's where I'm worried about. So And that's obviously a huge risk currently.
It feels like the fear of loss of humanity.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I thought we were trying to make this positive.
I know, it just is what it is, you know?
It is. But I think looking at where AI has been used and machine learning for good has to be emphasized. I mean, just read the COVID vaccine, right? Came to that vaccine through machine learning much faster than we would have if we didn't have it. So, looking at the positives and how it can be used to really further things of protection and
Right, and I think you and I were talking to Dr. Lena Wen, who had a piece in the Washington Post, who writes regularly there about, I think even about the success that Kaiser Permanente had in using AI for instance, with patients in hospitals. Okay, so then how do we ensure for companies that are using AI, how do we ensure there's transparency with that? I know when I'm in transaction with a business or an organization that I know that there's artificial intelligence being used, that whether the data being gathered or uses are happening. How is there transparency with people using in those situations?
Well, I think it's got to come with disclosure, and that may have to go through regulation, but disclosing how the information is collected and used, and that's going to come through regulatory, I think, for the most part.
Where else do you see AI? You pointed out the vaccine. Where else do any of you on the positive side see AI being a potential game changer in our lives for the positive?
Climate change mitigation. So I think intelligence can help a lot in order to allow a much better mitigation of the climate change. So definitely, obviously, everything in medicine. So I see a lot, and in the business, I see a lot of positives, even if what I said before sounds obviously very negative about this geopolitical dimension. But yeah, I think both sides of the coin do exist.
I mean, I think that it's basically AI can be used to do, the positives come in those places where AI can be used to do those things that human beings can't. That's where the positives will come from. If we start trying to immediately use it for those things that human beings can already do and want to do, I don't really see the purpose in that. But I think doing those things that we can't, climate change, medical issues, I mean, those are where it's going to really shine.
I want to remind our audience too, we're going to open it up for questions here in just a little bit. So if you've been waiting to ask one of our guests, our honorees tonight, a question, we'll get to that momentarily, and George and Pam will have our mobile mics. It's sort of every new good technology has a trade-off, right? The EV industry is growing. EVs are great because they replace fossil fuels, but also the production of batteries causes great harm in the mining and the processing of those rare earth minerals. Using our phones and information is great, and access to information, but it's also a trade-off on personal privacy and things like that, and the time band that it can be. What are the trade-offs that potentially we're facing with AI? You've talked about some of the creative, but where else should we be concerned about trade-offs and using AI to improve our lives?
Wow. I think one of the trade-offs we've been talking about too is that personal interaction and that emotional connection. That could be a huge trade-off that we may be making as we try to move faster in these areas. But I do want to comment on your EV cars too, because with those batteries, and it is, digging up the planet at some point, it's getting more efficient. But you also have to understand, when you plug your car into an outlet, where's that energy coming from? It's coming from fossil fuel. You really haven't done anything. So, research is very important in doing that. And I think AI is also going to, the research is going to be very critical as we develop solutions.
Maybe we don't pay attention to the downstream consequences of technology from the outset.
That's true.
Ramon, you have a comment? Nettie?
I was just thinking about AI making things faster, and sometimes faster isn't necessarily the best way to get to where you need to go. That's all.
Well, in terms of AI, in terms of the potential downsides again, how concerned are you as it grows and its efficiency? As AI grows in its use, and we see it in more places that AI itself is able to dictate how we use it and how we regulate it. That artificial intelligence itself gets so smart that it's able to sort of set the ground rules for how it will operate. It sounds like more of a science fiction.
Yeah, it really does. I think that.
I was going to toss it to you, but it could be a heavy book.
Yeah, it definitely, it's never been written about, though. Never. What was the question again? Go ahead.
So how concerned about AI getting
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not that concerned. I mean, but as I've said many times tonight, I'm an irrational optimist. So I'm not like, I just feel like we'll get there. I feel like we'll get to where we need to go. So I'm not, there are definitely things to be concerned about, but I'm hoping that we figure it out. I think that we can figure it out. I think that the issues are a matter of things that we can do. And I do think that humanity as a whole does need to do better. But I think once it does better, then AI can be a wonderful tool to make us really, really great, greater than ever, I think.
I would agree with that. And I think the optimism is going to come from the younger generation, too, who is growing up with it and understands the delicacy of it.
In boning up on my Arthur C. Clarke before I came here tonight, I was rereading a number of things, and it came across this quote that said, Arthur C. Clarke, I think, said this about 30 years ago, that our life, quote, our lifetime may be the last that will be lived out in a technological society. That seems so counterintuitive now because it is more and more than ever a technological society. What do you think he was getting at there?
It's not positive.
Michael?
That could be scary. I mean, is he thinking that, technology is taking over mankind? I don't know. It can be interpreted a lot of different ways. Or, have we left this planet and gone somewhere else? I know that was something that he's contemplated in that article in 2001.
We've talked about a number of issues, future issues on climate change, a lot about AI. I've talked a bit about the population and demographic changes happening in the world. You called yourself an irrational optimist.
Yes.
Gentlemen, how would you describe your sort of view of the future? Optimistic or pessimistic, rational or irrational? Or any way you want to describe it.
No, I think at this stage, I share your view, but there will be other steps. And as I said before, when you go to general artificial intelligence, then the risks are much higher for humanity. But we are not there yet. So let's really hope that regulation and that everything will be put in place, and that it will be in place before artificial intelligence reaches the next level. So we should be conscious about the risk, but there's no reason, I think, to be now, in French, defeatist at this moment in time.
I'm a total optimist. Coming to work every day and listening to our explorers and the solutions that they're driving towards, the youth that we're funding, the Slingshot Challenge that I mentioned, which had over 5,000 entries last year. And these are just 1-minute video clips of people, youth, 13 to 18, all around the world, talking about what they are doing to innovate to solve climate solutions, or come up with climate solutions in their own communities. So, total optimist.
I know you can speculate in your fiction, but do all three of you think the human future is Earth-based?
Good question.
I'm looking at my trustee
Looking
here.
well down the road. You're talking about new frontiers.
Personally, I do. I think that living on another planet is, I don't know if it's possible, but it's talked about. And I think exploring other planets, because we'll learn a lot about our own planet by exploring other planets. So I think that may drive solutions. But this is a personal decision, a personal answer. I don't see that.
And on exploration, do you think we're back on the right path in terms of exploring other planets, both the U.S. space effort?
I absolutely do. I feel like we should have never stopped.
Yeah.
I think that's because we will continue to learn and learn. The telescope now that's out there and probing more, and the landing on Mars and the collection of data. So I think we're just going to continue to learn more about our universe and our own world.
Earth-based or not?
No, I just maybe want to comment on what you said, Mike, your optimism about the many young individuals and so. And I think for me, there is a clear difference between the optimism about what the people will do about it individually, also in science, in research, and on the other hand, the institutional risk that's coming with artificial intelligence. So on the one side, there are a lot of positive aspects and of hope, and the risks are really, if you want, at another level.
Agreed.
Well, I want to make sure we're still on time. So if you three are willing, we've got a few.
Happy to.
We've got our mobile mics, Pam and George. We have some questions from the audience. George or Pam will come with the mic. And just tell us who you are and if you would ask your question.
Hi, my name is Siobhan Greenfield. I'm a sophomore at Basis DC. So one topic I felt that you kind of scratched the surface on, but then didn't really go into, and I would like to hear more about what you think about it, is like morals in AI, right? Because personally, I think like one of the best ways to regulate AI would to be somehow like incorporate like human morals into it, and I feel like that's obviously a big topic, and AI is also very broad. But like in my own computer class last year, we went into how AI can be very biased. For example, like facial recognition not being able to recognize people of color, or like a Twitter chatbot that had to be taken down in I think 24 hours because of how horrible it was, right? How do we like tackle that? How do we make sure that like going into like AI in the future, it's morally correct? Because you talked about like AI does not yet have like a human aspect when speaking with it. How would you begin to work on that? Like what would your ideas be?
I'm so glad you asked that. We haven't touched really on that or ethics.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think your question is great. I think ethics is a huge concern out there because, as we were talking earlier, it's AI is learning from what it can access right now, and if it's accessing things that are considered immoral or unethical, that's what's going to learn first, right? And it's going to improve over time. I'd love to hear your answer for it, but I think it's just going to take some regulation and more scrutiny, and I think there's going to have to be programs that are sitting over top of these whether it's social media or everything, that's a filter that can help identify and screen that out before it actually becomes into the millions of access in social.
Do you want to weigh in?
I think that a lot of those biases are due to those who are involved in creating the AI, the various individuals involved, and our technology reflects us. It comes from us. So I think that I don't know. I mean, it's a broad solution. I don't know, but I think that if there was a greater diversity of people involved who were creating the AI and programming the AI and teaching the AI and coding it, if we had more of a diversity, because I'm pretty sure if you looked at the individuals who created the AI that we have that did all of those things, you would probably see a trend in those creators, and creators, I mean scientists, engineers, et cetera. So I think that it kind of comes back to what I was saying, that we need all of humanity involved in creating these things. to filter out those issues, because those issues are going to come because they come from us. It's like, it's not that the software is malfunctioning. It is not malfunctioning. It is functioning exactly how it was built. And that's where we need to look for the solution on how it was built. But I mean, it's a broad issue that I'm not surprised about at all.
Yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned like comes from us. I remember reading an article from the MIT Technology Review about how a group of like big AI innovators, specifically like Elon Musk, we heard his name a lot tonight, made like a resolution to not work on AI advancements for 6 months, right? Like trying to put this regulation on it. And then they all went behind each other's backs. I mean, I think maybe less than a month later, Elon Musk was working on then making another chatbot on Twitter. So, not to mention Megan, but yeah. So it comes back to how do we regulate ourselves?
Do we have another question? Where?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
It's on. Okay, so first, before I start with the question, I'm an optimist. So after you hear the question, you're not going to think that, but I am an optimist. Right now, we're about where we were when the ITU was established in 1850 or so to regulate the telegraph. And they thought, well, how's this all going to play out? We look at today, it's not even comparable in any dimension to what they saw 150 years ago. If you look at what we call AI today, it may be artificial, it's not very intelligent yet. If you compare us to a machine, you're somewhere between 100 million and probably 100 trillion times more capable in terms of speed and density. So you now have a device, if we got the software right, our software of how our brain works, you got that right, then you could go to sleep and you could wake up in the morning and that AI instance would have created something 150, 200 years from today. So we sort of have regulation, we have control, we have ethics that are really based on the fact that things operate in a pace that we can deal with them. What if that pace were so fast that by the time we clicked and read what was on the screen, it had changed by 100 years? How do we want to prepare for that?
Don't know if there's a short answer to that. But everyone take a quick stab, we can get.
I don't think there is a short answer,
Yeah.
but I think we are at the beginning. It won't happen in a year or 10 or 20. I don't know when it'll happen, but the futurists that have come and spoken with us over the past, one of these days, right? So we're at the point where we can make it what we want to make it.
Let me leave that as a bit of a rhetorical question. I have one down front here and then one man in the middle, and I think, yes, young man here. If you would stand up, tell us your name and.
My name is William. I'm a sophomore at Besa Salsa. So it seemed to me like one of the only ways that people have regulated AI is with other AI. For example, on certain AP exams like AP Computer Science, people taking it have to write a code before the exam at home and then submit it to College Board. And College Board has been using an AI to detect whether those kids have been using AIs to cheat on that. I know multiple people last year that got falsely flagged for using AI because the AI the College Board uses isn't very good or accurate. What's the solution to that kind of stuff?
Thanks for sharing the experience. Any comment on that? All right.
Well, no, I think
ahead.
when you're answering the question a little bit in asking your question, I think it is going to be AI of some sort that is going to learn how to detect that. And we're thinking about that in our own world is we solicit, grants and applications, and we want to make sure that, are they using AI to write their grants and, using all of that? And so we're trying to figure out ourselves how to detect that and learn that, but it's going to come from us using AI at the same time. And it's just going to take time to figure that out.
But see, then it becomes AI policing us.
Yeah.
And that's the first step. You just see it already. You see it already.
I think we're going to get one more in the middle. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
My name is John Malin. I'm a member of the HAL 9000 steering group. I've got a specific question, probably for Roman. It's on satellites. It's something that he hinted at earlier. We have several trillion transactions and communications occurring every minute on a relatively small number of satellites. How do we protect the existing constellation of satellites against malevolent enemy interference?
Against?
Malevolent enemy interference.
Enemy interference.
Enemy interference.
Do you want to answer?
AI.
That one, yes, I agree with that. AI.
Well, thank you to our three honorees tonight for their participation. Congratulations on the awards. Nettie, Roman, Michael, thank you so much. And I'll turn it over to Walda Roseman.
Yeah, thank you all, including Bill. I had originally thought I was going to try to summarize this. I have changed my mind. I might go on ChatGPT and see what it turns up. I think that what does come to mind, and we heard a very negative view from Arthur Clarke. Thank you, Bill. I also see myself as an optimist, but I've lived in the DC area for about 50 years, and I have formed a thin veneer of cynicism around that optimism, but not enough to do away with the optimism. Arthur Clarke also said, and he said many things, many of them much more optimistic, but he also said that he warned us that those of us who were enamored with screens, that data was not information. And information was not vision. So we've been talking here, you all have been talking here about how to turn the bit of information we now have into a positive vision. Not easy to do, but obviously folks like yourselves are thinking about it. I really want to thank the questions from our younger people, which proves a point of the Clarke Foundation, and that is you may be the ones who have the insights much sooner about what the issues were and how we go about turning them to our advantage and away from our disadvantage. May I ask you all just to stand up so we can give you a proper applause for everything you've done.
Thank you.
And you may sit down again while I make some final remarks. You deserve the sitting. And thank you for letting us put you on the spot, too. I understand that. I want to thank a number of other people here also. I want to thank our many sponsors and our heartfelt appreciation to all of you. If you were not here, if you were not participating, this would not be the kind of event that it deserves to be. I ask you again to look into your program because it's worth noticing everyone who has stepped forward and contributed to this evening and to the future of the Unleash Imagination, Shape the Future program of HAL 9000 Challenge. You can see that the challenge part is in all caps. I also want to thank the Embassy of France, who was wonderful. And for the volunteers in this event, are you all here? Because if you are, or whoever's here, I appreciate your standing up so we can recognize you. I'm guessing actually they're out there volunteering, so be sure to thank them when you go out there. And finally, it's with great admiration, we again thank Chef Daniel and his staff for the exquisite food service. I want to thank the board of directors of the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation, who has helped pull all of this together. And now I want to challenge you all to check your email, it's all right, or your text, if you bidded in the auction, to see where you stand. Paul says he's ready to send the notes out. If he hasn't already, check it again in about 5 minutes. Tim Logue will be out by the desk where you can pay up on your bid and get your prize. And right now, there's dessert and coffee out in the other room and an opportunity to talk to everybody. So thank you all. Oh, and I forgot one very important person who shouldn't be forgotten, our executive director, who is Paul Julien, who has managed to make all of this happen. So, except for those who are going to come up here for their picture, please go enjoy yourselves. We'll be back. We'll be out in a little while. Talk to each other. Have fun.